All right, so today we're going to talk about how to make product photography at home with almost actually no budget really, just what you have on hand, and maybe you'll have to spend $1 or $2. But first, let me go get a coffee. I'm good now. All right, so today we'll go for product photography, sort of the easy way on a dark background to give it somewhat of a dramatic look. And you'll see it's very easy. And of course, I do these shots for presentations for new products, and I use some more elaborate equipment, but you don't really need that if you want to achieve a similar look. So first, what you'll need is a table. Then you'll need some black paper, so you can get some from the dollar store if you don't have any, which are basically $1. You're going to need some masking tape because we're going to be taping the background to the wall, so you don't want to rip out the paint. You will need a light source, so a lamp, or if you have something more sophisticated, LEDs or whatnot, we'll just need a light source. Next, it's optional, but I would say ideal is a tripod so you can frame up your shot and then, have it sit there and not having to hold the camera the whole time. And then finally, you'll need your product. All right, so first we're going to take our table and then position it on the long side because we want our background to extend as far as possible so we could have a fully black background. And then we're going to tape our paper backdrop to the wall. So we'll start with the top first and then make sure you have it high enough so that it would be higher than your product. Then we're going to tape it to the table. Now we're going to position our light source. So I'm just going to use this little box here to set it to the side. So we want the light to hit from the side of our subject to give it a dramatic look. So try to set it as close to your product as possible so you can get a softer light. Now I'm going to set up my tripod and frame up my shot. So I'm using the XE4 with the XF 50mm f2, but really you could use any lens. The ideal way would be to have a longer focal length so that we can narrow down the field of view so that we don't see so much of the outside of our paper backdrop. But if you have a kit lens like the 15-45 or the 18-55, that would be perfect. Just zoom it up to the far end, whether it's 45 or 55, and then frame up your shot so you will get a narrower field of view. Now it's time to turn off the lights in the room so that only the light coming from our light source is going to be hitting our subject. And then from there you can play with your settings to make it brighter or darker just until you find the right exposure. I find making it a little bit darker works better for me. Now if you find that one side is more lit than the other, the one thing you can do is rotate your product at an angle, or you could use a piece of white paper or foam core to put on the other side of the table so that the light coming from the one side bounces back onto your product. All right, so now it's time to play and then rotate our product, shoot different angles, have fun with it. And then from there, you can play around with different settings. You could use a wide aperture or a smaller aperture. If you use a wide aperture, which means a smaller f number, you're going to get less of your product in focus. So one area specifically will be in focus and then the rest will get blurry, which could be looking good. Or if you wanted to have more of your product in focus, simply step down your aperture, which means bring it up to a higher number like f8 for example, and then you're going to get more of your product in focus. All right, so now that we have our shots, it's time to head to the computer to edit our images. All right, so now let's import our images. So let's go to import to our memory card and import them. All right, so we got our images imported. So let's go to develop. And then as a default, I do have a curve enabled, which will lift up the shadows. So as you can see, this is normal, and that's what it imports with. So we can play around with that. So we have our first image here. So first I would go in and select the ones I like better, that I want to work with. They are a little bit dark, but like I said, I like to have them a little bit darker and then work with them afterwards. Okay, so we have our images, so let's remove the ones we don't want for now. So we got all this to work with. So let's start with the first one. So it is definitely a little bit too dark. First of all, what I want to do is correct the white balance, so I'm going to be using this here and use the gray, and that will bring it back to sort of the right white balance. Now I'm going to go into my profiles, and then you can choose from the Fujifilm profiles, and then let's just see which one we want to use. There's not a whole lot of color, so it doesn't change much, so I'm going to go with one of my more creative sort of profile, which adds a little bit of blue. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to bring up the exposure, bring down the highlights, not that much here, and then that's not too bad. And then you can see we have some white around the corners. We're going to fix that. I want to straighten it a little bit, so I'm going to go into the crop, and then let's try auto. Yeah, that did the trick here, so that's good. All right, so this looks good, but we have a couple issues. So what we could do to get rid of these areas is obviously we can crop just like that, and then we would be good. Now this looks good, but I want to make it a little bit more dramatic. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to add linear gradients. So I'm going to start with the first one, just draw, and then if you want it straight, you can hold down shift, and then that will keep it straight, as you can see. So we can do that, and then I'm going to make this to, you know, -4 in terms of exposure, as well as the shadow, to make it really dark. Now what I usually like to do is to add one on each side, so that it's kind of a little bit more dramatic. So let's start here, holding shift, and as you can see, it's a little bit too much, but what I'm going to do is that I'm going to bring it back here so that I don't lose too much on that side. Now this is all preference in terms of, you know, how you like it. I'm just doing it the way I like to do it. So again, just gonna bring it down, and a nice thing is that it actually remembers the setting I was using when I make a new mask. So just gonna add a last one at the bottom here, exaggerating it, and then bring it down a little bit. And then that's pretty good. Now one side note is I can go out, and then you can see we have this sort of blue color here. If we want to get rid of that, we can use the HSL here, the sliders, and then get to the blue into the saturation, and then, you know, bring it down a little bit, and then aqua, I guess there's some there, so bring it down. So we basically removed the blue color, which is fine because we don't really have much in this image right here. Now this is not a brand new product, so the fact that there's little bits of dust doesn't matter that much to me, but if you wanted to clean it up, you can just go and use the healing tool, and then just clean them. If you're not satisfied with the selection, you can always move it around. Let's do this one. It's kind of annoying, so I'm gonna fix it. And then here we go. So one thing I like to do is to actually just copy all of the settings to keep it consistent, and then move them over to the next images. So let's just go to another one that's different. So I'm just going to do Control C or Command C, depending on if you're on Mac or Windows, and then you can select what you want to bring over. So I want to bring the mask as well. So copy, and then let's get to this one here, and then we can Control V or Command V, depending on Mac, if you're on Mac or Windows, and then I brought these over. So from there, I'm going to work on what I previously did. So you can notice the gradient is kind of straight because that's what we had on the other one. So I'm just going to go into my masks, use the one, find this one, and then now, since I have sort of an angle, I am going to angle it to make it fit, and then I'm also going to stretch it so it makes more sense and works. Now I'm also going to crop a little bit because I do have some white in the back here, and we still have some, but we're going to fix that in just a moment. So let's go back to our gradients here, So this one, again, a slight angle. Bring it down. This one, slight angle. Pull it back and stretch it. And let's find the one on the side. Stretch it here. There we go. And then if I wanted to be lazy, I could just add one more to the side here to make it even darker. Bring it down, the shadows, the exposure as well, and then we don't see it. Now I do want to make a couple corrections. So you can see there's a little bit of orange there that I don't particularly like. So orange, I'm just gonna bring it down in my HSL, and a little bit of the yellow as well, and that cleans it up. And then on the overall image, it's a little bit overexposed, so I'm just gonna bring down the highlights, and here I go. So that looks pretty good. So one last thing you can do, and that's something that I often do, is that I have the product shot here, but I want to make a thumbnail for YouTube video, and the product is too big within the frame, so I can't really put text on the side. So what I will do is that I will edit in Adobe Photoshop. Now first thing I want to do is make this an actual layer rather than a background. I'm going to crop the image, so I press on C. 16:9 is my crop, which is a thumbnail for YouTube. Now I can zoom out. That gives me enough space. So I'm going to use the selection tool, so press on M. I'm going to select the top portion, do Control T or Command T, and then if this is locked, so it sort of expands and keeps its original form, you want to hold down on Shift so that it stretches only from one side, and then pull it up, hit enter. Now we're going to select this section here, do the same thing, Command T or Control T, stretch it while holding Shift, and now I'm covering my whole area. And then from there I can go on and add the various elements I'm gonna be using for my thumbnail. So back to the roots, for example, and then from there, obviously I can play around, add my logo and elements for my thumbnail, and then I just solved my issue of the product being too big for my thumbnail. Alright, so that will be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this quick and easy sort of product shooting little tutorial, if you would. Now, if you like content like this and you would like to see more about Fujifilm products or tips and tricks like these, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And then for now, I'm gonna get back to my coffee.